My name is Ian and welcome to Planted. I'm on a mission to help you have more success with plants. In this episode we look at training plants, pruning plants and tying knots. And what I never realized is that I essentially am pruning and trimming and training all the time. Every week I'll be out clipping and making a little minor adjustment. And it means that I never actually set about in a big pruning session to shape my plants, which is what I think most people think you should do. I've talked about wisterias extensively and how I cut them whenever I want, regardless of whether they're in flower or not. And that's purely to keep on top of them and prevent the plant from getting away from me. So when it comes to pruning, you've got pruning for shape, which you do with a wisteria, and while you're doing that, you're also pruning for flowers. I'm going to show you how to train a fig onto a wall, and that's to improve shape, but also to improve the fruit production so that sunlight can get in there and ripen those figs. And then I'm going to show you how I train tomatoes. A great plant to practice on is the tomato. I have it growing down here, and you'll see that in just a moment. Because they grow so fast, if you make a mistake, wait 10 days, and your mistake will be completely hidden. Now, a final word about pruning. When you've done your pruning, at some point you have to stop. Don't keep clipping and trimming and trimming. That's not a good idea. And then also it'll look a little bit strange. If you've tied up plants and tied up branches, it'll take a little time for them to orientate into the new direction. Pruning, knot tying and training all go hand in hand. You can't do one without the other. So this knot is a basic knot that I use all the time, and I would encourage you to learn it. We start off with our garden twine attached with a clove hitch to our support frame. This is very important. It then has another half hitch put on top of that. There's a further explanation of this knot at 8:14 in this video. You then repeat that knot about 2 inches further up. Exactly the same process, and then you finish it off with another half hitch. Please do not get in the habit of tying knots directly onto the branches that you're trying to train. It doesn't work. You can easily restrict growth and it becomes a weak point. Tie the two tail ends together and you end up with this very effective, essentially it's a double knot. The stem is passed through the knot, and with it sliding it means that you can tighten it and slacken it. So this video is all about pruning and training and getting plants to do what you want. This tomato pot was planted up a few weeks ago, and I'm going to show you how to turn it from this rapid growth into something that looks a bit like this. You can see that this plant starts on this side. We've wrapped it around and tied it here, and then it's also been tied again here. Now I think that the biggest challenge with growing tomatoes is you can water them, you can feed them, but it's these side shoots. There's a side shoot there and a side shoot there. If you pinch these out at this side, then you end up with this one main stem that keeps on going, and you can wrap it around and around and around, and then you get the fruit set. You can see the plant underneath it has already set a little cluster of our yellow pear fruit. You want your goodness to go into growing edible crop rather than lots of foliage, and this is all that came off it. Lots of thick shoots. And anyone would think, well, I want to leave that because that's going to grow me lots more tomatoes. But I pinch out the side shoots, leave the main leaves and then the stem, and this is a once a week job because it really does grow very fast and is very prolific. So let's go and look at some more training and pruning. Oh, and one more thing. This knot here is something that you should practice before you use it. And because you don't actually tie it to the plant can move around freely and you're not restricting growth. I like to pinch out the side shoots. I think this keeps the plant manageable. You can use your fingertips, or if you get a very thick side shoot, you can use clippers to just gently remove it.
I use my Kung Fu gardener's grip to pre-drill holes in the backer plates and also pre-drill holes in the rail. It's this assembly that I'm going to use to train my fig. The training here is to increase sunlight into the branches and also help support the rather heavy fruit set that we have this year. I could wait another few weeks and do this, but at some point the weight of the fruit is going to get so much that the branches will hang down and they could even snap. Pre-drilling the holes makes the whole job easier. It probably takes 5 minutes to pre-drill the holes, and it takes less than that to actually attach your rail to the house. I'm lucky that I've got wooden shingles on my house, so I don't mind drilling directly into those shingles. The training of this fig is going to bring a lot more scrutiny to it. It's going to look nice, it's going to be attractive, it'll let sunlight in there, and hopefully we'll have a substantial crop of ripe figs. So I think it's well worth the effort to set this up parallel and level and straight.
So now we've got our rail fastened securely. We've got our little backer block behind here, which gives us a gap for our garden twine to go, and then we can slide our branches up and down to suit and get nice spacing. You don't want too many of these because they prevent that line from going up and down. Now this training is to induce and ripen our fig fruits. It's also to improve our shape. We want to make sure that sunlight can get in here. And by having these nicely tied up, evenly spaced, we can trim off spare leaves and really let the sunlight get in here and ripen these figs. It should look good when it's done. This is the same knot that we used on the tomatoes, and it's something that I use frequently. And if the tomato one looked a little bit daunting, then practice. Get a stick, get some twine, and just do that knot over and over again until you get it right. And then when you come to an application like this, you know exactly how to tie it. Let's have a look at a close-up. Now you can see that this plant can move in the wind, which makes the branch nice and strong. Let's just get rid of that. Here we go. And then they can also slide up and down however we want. The first one is always the more tricky. Now what I recommend you do is start in the middle, and then you can space out from there.
And here is the finished article. We've got best part of 12 branches equally spaced across the rail. I did remove some of the leaves to let more sunlight in. I'll probably come back and remove a few more. And just as with the tomatoes, when you tie up these figs, the leaves all face different directions and it looks a bit clumsy. Give it a few days and it'll all sort itself out.
And what I've got here is Nicotiana. It's a tobacco plant, very fragrant. Now I grew this in the greenhouse over winter, and it puts out a lot more growth in March, so it comes into its first flower flush quite early, which it's done. And you can see here that the weight of these flowers, unstaked, have dragged it down. But this is something that I do all the time and don't even think about it. And here we've got a really nice healthy root ball. Lots of side shoots are now coming out. So the plant's very healthy and happy. Just needs a bit of guidance from us. So this is pruning to improve the shape and promote future flowers. So rather than trying to pull this up and then stake it, I'm going to give it a bit of a haircut. Now we've got lots of nice shoots in here. We'll leave that flower. We can take that off. Now you might think, well, that's such a waste to throw all this away. But I'm in this for the long game. I want flowers in June, July and August, going on for ages. This is that gnarly trunk that grew last year, so I'm going to cut this back just a little bit more and even further improve its shape. Took me a minute to prune the plant, and then I'm not bothered with staking and having it fall over, and it would eventually snap. That's what typically happens. So this is the drastic approach for a long-term display of flowers. Let's go and have a look at the Anisodontia. This plant flowers its little heart out. We've got these pink flowers in clusters, and it'll just go on and on for weeks and weeks and weeks. This is the Anisodontia. I've talked about this before. I have a lot of respect for it. It does what it's supposed to do. Now if we leave it like this, these long stems that start way down here and come all the way up will get very, very heavy and start to flop around. And a little bit like the Nicotiana, you take some weight out of the crown, then the plant doesn't get so leggy and floppy. So by pruning out the tops of those strong branches, the side shoots start to fill out, and they'll become very bushy and flower even more. Now with wisteria, the flowers have gone. And I always like to start low down and work up. That way I can see what I'm doing. This is new growth, and I'm cutting it. I'm leaving about 12 inches of growth on the plant. And I can always come back later and tidy it up. but I'm just trying to remove some of the weight. Take your time, come back and have a little look-see. Yeah, that's good. That's cleaned it out.
What was supposed to be an 8-minute video doubled in size. Anyway, if you got this far, thank you so much. Tell your friends, tell your family. Happy planting.